So today we are taking a look at Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD release of Michael Mann's unintentional failure, The Keep. Now if you're a fan of the film, then you're already well aware of its very messy history with the production and also mainly with the runtime and the post-production and the release of the film. The film was released theatrically in December of 1983 with a 1 hour and 36-minute runtime. And it was met with very harsh responses, both critically...
It's just not that interesting.
Okay, so much for The Keep. Finally, two more downturned thumbs for The Keep. The confusing special effects spectacular that has more lightning bolts than credible characters.
and from audiences alike. The main complaint was the film felt very disjointed, felt very messy, and it just ends without any resolution or explanation, or even who these characters were, what their motivations were, and it also left audiences feeling very confused and upset during the film and also afterwards. The only positive feedback from both critics and audiences was that the visuals were stunning and the Tangerine Dream score. So yes, The Keep is very much style over substance, but not at the fault of director Michael Mann, who still to this day has made his feelings very publicly known since its release back in 1983. Now the film had a lot of production problems, but as Michael Mann said in an interview, the real hell was during post-production, stating that the post-production process working with the studio was the most miserable experience he has ever had, to the point he even contemplated on quitting directing altogether. Now, Michael Mann originally produced his first cut to the studio that ran 3 hours and I believe 30 minutes. And this is a misconception here with the public. Many have heard about this 3-hour plus cut, but this was his first cut, or what's known as a rough cut, that's presented to the studio to see what they have. A 3-hour plus cut was never intended to be released. In fact, Michael Mann was contractually obligated from the studio to have The Keep at no more than 2 hours. So Mann went and recut the film, but as he was doing so, he found out that the film needed reshoots in order to have some connective tissue so that the 2-hour cut would make more sense. Unfortunately, the studio denied his request for reshoots. So Michael Mann had no choice but to do his best editing the film at 2 hours and still try to make it make sense. However, after terrible test screenings, the studio lost any faith they had in the movie and went back and cut it down themselves to 1 hour and 36 minutes. At least the 2-hour cut, even though Mann was disappointed by it, still basically resembled Michael Mann's vision of the film. This 1 hour and 36 minute cut did not. And ultimately, Michael Mann has gone on to say, "It's safe to say that there is no cut of the film that I feel needs to be seen." There is even a period of time where Michael Mann was thinking about remaking the film. Now, when the film hit video in the mid-80s, it did gain some extra traction than it did in the theater, and The Keep actually soon became an instant cult classic. Now, when the film hit the TV airways, the movie was longer, and I don't know if it was the full 2-hour cut, but the TV version did include scenes that was not in this 96-minute version. And this is how Simon and I first saw the movie. It was a late-at-night movie on Channel 49, which was a Fox channel back in our hometown of Portland, Oregon, in 91 when we saw it, and we loved it. And back in, I believe, the early 2000s, or maybe it was late 98, 99, Anchor Bay did come out with a DVD that did include the 2-hour cut. And I've been trying to Google this to show a screenshot of what the DVD looked like, but for some reason, the life of me, I just can't find a picture of it. The only thing I could find was this, that's dubbed as the TV version. But I could swear it said on the sleeve, Director's Cut. So if anyone out there has it or knows what I'm talking about, please let me know down below in the comments. And when Vinegar Syndrome announced their 4K release of the film, us fans immediately rushed to Twitter and we tweeted at Vinegar Syndrome, or I guess X'd at Vinegar Syndrome, if the release will be the elusive 3-hour plus cut or the 2-hour cut. And then we received it. The earth-shattering, bowel-shaking news that unfortunately they were unable to find the 3-hour cut. But as for the 2-hour cut, that is available. However, Vinegar Syndrome was unable to secure the rights. It's one of those movies where, it's kind of all over the place of who owns what of the film. So all Vinegar Syndrome could work with was the 96-minute cut, which, is disappointing. Even to Vinegar Syndrome, they were disappointed by that. But this is much better than what we ever had before as terms as video and audio quality with this 4K. So Vinegar Syndrome has restored the Keep from its original 35mm negative, forming a 4K DI and remastered Blu-ray with HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading on the UHD disc and preserving its original theatrical ratio of 2.35 to 1. So let's do it. Let's take a closer look at Vinegar Syndrome's 4K release against the previous release DVD, and also stay tuned after the review for a rundown of all the special features included on this Vinegar Syndrome release. The Keep is an absolute stunning display of 4K perfection, but it's really the black levels that are a highlight here, and this is evident around the 23-minute mark within the Keep. The 4K scan comes with a beautifully rendered, deep, inky, and truer looking black levels, where the HDR10 really helps with this, enhancing them, that are solid, even sometimes I notice pitch black, along with strong and rich shadows and shading that really gives the image a greater amount of depth to it. I did also notice some nice variations within the black levels of certain scenes, and the mixture of black and light sources worked perfectly, also drawing out certain details and textures within the darkest corners and low light scenes where they were crushed out on the DVD. This all gives the film a much truer, realized cinematic experience than it's ever had before on home video. Highlights are also something of note here. Light sources especially are handled with ease, such as the bare bulbs lighting, and they aren't as blown out as they are on the DVD. But also the sheer lighting from the numerous crosses within the Keep, or the beams of light throughout the film, is also completely blown out here on the DVD. Now with this 4K, they look much more appropriate and balanced out. The saturation levels are handled perfectly, creating an intense and very attractive presentation. The saturation gives a very nice and needed punch, injecting some really nice warmth and life into the image without the colors looking artificially done or too hot, including some nicely rendered skin tones. Contrast is also handled perfectly. That really comes into play here with dark and light scenes and giving the image a really nice naturally bright look to it, unlike the DVD where a lot of daylight scenes looked overly exposed. But I think the biggest improvement and reference point here with this 4K is just with the image quality. Vinegar Syndrome continues to do what they do best, and that is nothing, in terms of artificially cleaning up the image to make it look modern. And the Keep is prime evidence of this. And you can clearly see this with the opening titles. There's hairs and scratches that are present, and there are areas throughout the film that has some fleeting light scratches that are more noticeable in dark shots. However, at the same time, the image has been cleaned up with the 4K scan and is free from any unwanted anomalies or artifacts that are not baked into the negative. All of this means that the 4K master still retains its natural 35mm appearance. However, I will say it is not the sharpest or most detailed 4K presentation out there. And this isn't due to a poor transfer. Instead, it's merely due to the type of lenses and film stock that were involved while shooting the production. But even with all its inherited imperfections, the overall clarity is definitely at its peak, that looks as sharp and defined as it can be, with a very nice amount of delineation throughout the presentation. Finer details are very impressive. The creature within the Keep looks outstanding. We can clearly make out every minute detail with the costume design that really shows off the makeup effects as well. The Keep's 4K image is, for lack of a better word, spectacular, showcasing the production design, the makeup and special effects and cinematography, filling the entire 235:1 frame. This is just a stunning 4K presentation that proves what a 4K scan and HDR10 grading can really do. Now, the film's grain structure is somewhat of a mismatch due to the limitations of the source material. Now, I will say, even though the grain does fluctuate from looking natural and organic without any clumping and smearing, the grain does look very thick. Again, this is 100% due to the inherited of the source material. But overall, the grain structure at no point looks artificially managed and looks clean. The Keep does have a tight but thick, natural-looking 35mm filmic appearance. Alright, now let's get into the audio presentation of this 4K, and the Keep on 4K carries a new lossless DTS HD stereo mix that is sourced from the original stereo track. And this is noted in the text card prior to the film. And this does result in a very solid audio track right from the main titles with the Tangerine Dream's percussion-heavy synth score to the end of the film. The film score carries very nice amount of weight and depth, along with some great sounding ranges and presence with fidelity. The only area I notice is periodically the heavy bass from the score does sometimes overpower the sound effects and also some dialogue in certain scenes. It's not constant, but it does definitely happen. Sound effects such as from gunshots especially sound a little thin, but the sound and low levels kick into gear with the finale of the film, and when the bass goes deep, it doesn't disappoint. Also, sound effects from atmospherics such as wind, or definitely the hollow sound from inside the Keep, comes through clean and clear and sounds pretty eerie. There are a couple heavy effects scenes where dialogue does drop in and out underneath the heavy effects and also the film score, but overall the dialogue is balanced and stays clear. And again, this is just to be expected from the source material from the original soundtrack, and not a problem with the remaster of the sound. This is another very impressive 4K presentation of Vinegar Syndrome that completely outshines any previous format. And while yes, it does have some inherited issues that just can't be controlled, this is still a must-have in your collection. Alright, now we're going to dive into the special features, the supplemental material of this disc, and the extras are spread between both the UHD disc and the Blu-ray disc. Now both discs offer up some new 2025 audio commentary tracks from film historian Matthew Gear, and this is an absolute outstanding commentary track, and honestly one of the best commentary tracks I've heard in a while. It's a very informative track that if you're into filmmaking on any kind of level, you definitely want to hear this commentary track. It's awesome. But on the Blu-ray disc, we have 6 new 2025 interviews with the producer of the film, the visual effects supervisor, makeup effects supervisor, an interview with Tangerine Dream's Jonas Schmaling, interview with actor Michael Carton, and rounding off the interviews, we have an interview which I really appreciated the most out of all the interviews, and that's with the author of the novel, F. Paul Wilson, which again is a fantastic interview with the author of the book that the movie is very loosely based on. And to round it off, we have theatrical trailer and a still gallery. Each and every interview is definitely worth watching. Alright guys, well thanks so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes here as we talk about Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD presentation of The Keep. Let's get this DVD out of here. Never want to see that again. As always guys, thanks so much for watching. Huge shout out to Vinegar Syndrome for sending this one to us. And we'll see you next time in our 4K versus Blu-ray comparison.
Netflix presents 4K versus Blu-ray comparisons.